At my sister's wedding, I wasn't on the guest list, not by mistake, by intention. I showed up in a navy blue dress I bought just for that day, holding a carefully wrapped gift. The woman at the check-in looked puzzled. "There's no seat under your name," she said. And then came my mother, Evelyn, in pearls and champagne silk, her voice cool and clear. "You were told not to come. This is for family only." Heads turned. My feet refused to move, but my heart had already left. That moment, under the warm sun, I finally understood. I didn't belong. I arrived 10 minutes early. Not too early to look desperate, but not late enough to give anyone the chance to say I was being disruptive. The chapel garden was dressed in gold and ivory, delicate lights strung through the trees, soft music floating in the air. I wore navy blue, not black. I didn't want to look like I was mourning something, though in a way I was. I stood in line like everyone else, holding the gift, a hand-bound wedding cookbook I'd made myself. Family recipes, some of them were mine, some from our grandmother, pages filled with warm meals and burnt edges of memory. I smiled at the woman at the guest table and gave her my name. She blinked at the list, flipped a page, then another. "I'm sorry, what was the last name again?" "Moore," I repeated. "Rachel Moore, maid of honour's sister." She gave a tight-lipped smile. "I don't see you on here." I felt my stomach sink. "Maybe it's under Evelyn Moore. I'm her daughter, the bride's sister." That's when I saw her, my mother. Elegant as ever, floating toward us in her beige heels and perfectly pinned hair. Her face was unreadable, but her voice carried sharp and clean. "Rachel," she said, with that slight tilt of her chin, "we agreed you wouldn't come." My mouth opened, then closed. "I told you," she said, glancing at the guest woman, then back at me. "This is for family." And just like that, she turned. She didn't make a scene. She didn't need to. Her words did all the damage. Around me, people avoided my eyes. Someone coughed. A child pointed. And I stood there, rooted, the gift suddenly too heavy in my hands. I didn't cry. Not then. I placed the book gently on the corner of the table, straightened it. Then I turned and walked away. No one stopped me. Not even Lily. Especially not Lily. I was 6 the first time I realised I was background noise in my own home. It was the end of the school day, parents parking hastily, hugging their kids, backpacks swinging as they ran into open arms. I stood by the bike rack, lunchbox clutched in one hand, scanning faces. My teacher waited with me. "Maybe they got stuck in traffic," she said kindly. They hadn't. An hour later, Evelyn pulled up in her silver car, sunglasses on, chewing gum. "Lost track of time," she said. No apology, not even eye contact. Lily, sitting in the back seat with a balloon from a friend's party, didn't even look at me. I sat in silence, my legs dangling off the booster seat I'd long since outgrown. That year, for my 7th birthday, I asked for a cake with purple frosting and a handmade card. I got a store-bought vanilla sheet cake with the wrong name on it, Rachel, with an extra A. Lily got a princess-themed party 2 months later, complete with a bounce house and 30 kids. Evelyn fussed over her like she was royalty. "Lily's so graceful," she said, pinning a tiara on her head. "You should learn to be more like her." I did learn. I learned to be invisible. By age 10, I knew how to cook breakfast for both of us while Evelyn got ready for work. I learned to help Lily with her homework, clean up the living room before guests came over, and vanish when adult conversations began. I became a shadow, efficient, quiet, useful. One night I had the flu. I asked Evelyn to stay home. My fever made the world spin. She stood in the doorway, purse on her shoulder, and said, "You'll be fine. Just sleep it off. Don't wake Lily." I lay in bed, shivering, listening to the front door close. That was the moment I stopped asking for care, for attention, for anything, It was easier that way. By the time I entered high school, Evelyn had stopped attending my parent-teacher conferences, but she never missed a single one of Lily's dance recitals. I remember watching from the back of the auditorium, Evelyn holding a bouquet of roses, beaming. When Lily caught sight of her, she waved. Evelyn waved back. No one saw me in the back row, not even them. I was 33 when I lost the baby. It happened suddenly without drama. No blood-curdling scream, no fall down the stairs, just a dull ache that worsened overnight, and by morning there was no heartbeat. The ER was cold and quiet. I remember the ultrasound tech avoiding my eyes, the doctor clearing his throat before saying, "I'm sorry." I didn't cry. Not immediately. They offered to call someone. I shook my head. But as I sat in that hospital bed, pale and hollow, my phone felt heavier than ever. I opened my contacts, scrolled past names I hadn't spoken to in years, and stopped at one. Mum. I hesitated, then called. It rang, and rang. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I texted instead, "Lost the baby at St. Mark's Hospital, alone." It was the most vulnerable thing I'd typed in years. 15 minutes later, her reply came, "So sorry to hear, I'm with Lily right now. She has a big audition tomorrow. Hope you get some rest." That was it. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Do you need me there?" Not even, "I love you." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Later that afternoon, a delivery arrived. A pre-packed fruit basket, generic card, "Thinking of you, Evelyn." The kind of thing you'd send to a co-worker who broke a toe. I didn't touch the basket. I gave it to the nurse's station. What hurt most wasn't the silence. It was that I had dared to hope she would come, that for once pain might pull us closer, that shared blood meant shared grief. Instead, Evelyn showed me, again, that some bonds are only real in biology, not behaviour. A week later, Lily posted a photo from that very audition. Her caption, "So proud of this girl, couldn't miss it for the world." Evelyn smiled in the background, radiant. And there I was, recovering from a surgery I didn't want, grieving a child I never got to hold, invisible, again. That was the last time I tried to reach for her. Hope, I learned, is a dangerous kind of self-harm. It started with a letter, not addressed to me, of course. It was a misdelivered envelope slipped into my mailbox by mistake, from a law firm I vaguely recognised. The name on the front read Evelyn Moore. My address was scratched out with a red pen. Curiosity got the best of me. I opened it. Inside was a draft copy of a property reassignment, our family's old lake cabin, the one my father built with his own hands, was being formally transferred to Lily. No mention of me, not even in passing. I reread it twice. The same cabin where I learned to fish, the porch where I once nursed a broken ankle while Lily rode jet skis, the fireplace I helped refinish the summer after college, all gone, quietly passed on, silently erased. I called Evelyn. She answered on the second ring. "Rachel," she said, like my name was an inconvenience. "Is something wrong?" "I got a letter," I said. "The lake cabin. You're giving it to Lily?" She didn't speak right away. Then, "It's already done. No conversation, no warning? It's not your concern." "Not my concern?" I laughed, though it wasn't funny. "It was Dad's." "And your father," she cut in, was very clear about who he trusted with legacy decisions. "Lily's starting a family. She'll use it. You—" She trailed off, like finishing that sentence would be too cruel or too honest. I waited. She sighed. "You've always been independent. You don't need things like that. Lily does." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. Not, "You're not part of this family." Not, "You were never enough." But you don't need it. Because love, in her world, was a transaction. And I didn't qualify for the benefits. I hung up without saying goodbye. That weekend, I drove to the cabin. My key no longer worked. A new security system blinked red. Through the window, I saw Lily's maternity photos already framed above the mantel, like I'd never existed, a house full of memories scrubbed clean of mine. When I turned to leave, I noticed the wooden sign my dad carved years ago, Moor Haven, had been sanded down and repainted. Lily's Landing. That was the moment I stopped being angry and started being done. By the time Lily announced her engagement, I already knew I wouldn't be invited. Still, I mailed a handwritten card. No glitter, no dramatic plea, just my own slanted cursive on ivory paper. Wishing you every joy in this new chapter. Love, Rachel. I included a gift card to her favourite spa, tucked gently inside. It came back a week later. Returned to sender, no note, just a black line drawn across my name, like I was a bill unpaid. I called Mum. She answered but didn't say my name, only, "What is it?" I sent something for Lily. It was returned. She doesn't feel comfortable. She wants peace at her wedding. I let that sit for a moment. So, I'm not invited? I think it's best, Evelyn said coolly. You showing up would only create tension. I'm her sister. She has enough going on without guilt. Her voice sharpened. Rachel, please, don't make this about you. That was always her line. When I cried at Lily's graduation because I wasn't in a single photo. When I got a job out of state and no one helped me move. When I miscarried and she didn't visit. Don't make this about you, so I didn't. Not anymore. A week before the wedding, Evelyn posted a family brunch photo online. My aunts, my cousins, even the neighbour's dog. Everyone smiling around a long table decorated in blush and white. My old seat at the end, where I used to sit every Christmas, was filled with a centrepiece. A bouquet of lilies, subtle, surgical. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not hurt, not sad, just still. They hadn't forgotten me. That would have been easier. They had remembered and chosen to remove me. Lily blocked me on every platform. Even Evelyn switched her accounts to private. They were curating the family they wanted, and I wasn't part of the display. That weekend, I watched the wedding live stream alone in my apartment. The feed stuttered occasionally, but the audio was clear. The music, the vows, the laughter. Evelyn's speech, Lily, you have always been the heart of this family. Today we celebrate you, and only you. She raised her glass. The camera caught the moment perfectly. And then, a blur. Someone approaching the table. It was the server, whispering something to Evelyn. Her face froze. The camera cut away. And in that moment I knew that was when they realised I had come anyway. I didn't stay long at the wedding. After Evelyn's words, "This is for family only," and the stunned silence that followed, I turned and walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for 15 minutes, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the sunlight flicker through the windshield. Then I drove away, the gift still wrapped in the back seat. When I got home, I didn't cry, I didn't drink, I didn't scream. I opened my closet and started packing a box, not of clothes, of memories. Photos from birthdays where I was the one taking the picture, never in the frame. Letters never sent. Cards never answered. Programs from Lily's recitals where I sat alone in the back row. A cracked ceramic mug that once said number 1 daughter, gifted to me by my dad before he left. I boxed them all. Then I opened my phone and deleted every contact that shared my blood. Evelyn, gone. Lily, gone. Every cousin, every aunt who'd watched me shrink away and said nothing. Gone. It wasn't rage that moved my fingers. It was clarity. If I didn't draw a line, I'd drown in the grey. The next morning I applied for a certification course in non-profit management. I had always volunteered. Shelters, food banks, women's clinics. But now I wanted structure, tools, power. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of a class of 12. Older women, young mothers, a retired nurse, a former addict, all of us different, all of us trying to build something better out of the parts we'd been handed. I wasn't Rachel the forgotten sister there. I was just Rachel. I spoke once during a discussion on public perception and personal identity. I told them about being left out, not with tears, with precision. I watched as heads nodded, eyes softened. One woman even whispered, "Me too." It was the first time I felt seen without having to explain myself. At night, I studied hard, built case plans, read about housing rights, trauma-informed care, legal protections for survivors. I wasn't just learning for myself. I was preparing for the day I would no longer apologize for existing. And every step forward, every page turned, every stranger who listened, felt like a stone placed beneath my feet. Not a path they gave me, but one I was laying down for myself. He entered the room without introduction, grey suit, lean frame, eyes like a courtroom, sharp, patient, always watching. I'd seen his name on the syllabus, retired Judge Leonard Haynes, guest lecturer, legal systems and social equity. But I hadn't expected him to show up in person. Most guest lectures were pre-recorded Zoom clips. Not this time. He stood behind the podium and adjusted the mic. "Let's talk about justice," he said, voice gravelly and calm. "And who gets left out of it?" The room went still. For the next 90 minutes, he peeled back the system layer by layer, laws built to protect but written without everyone in mind. He spoke not as an authority, but as someone disappointed by the very tools he once wielded. At the end, he opened the floor. "Questions?" Silence, until my hand rose. "I'm curious," I said. "In your years on the bench, did you ever regret following the law?" He looked at me for a long second, then nodded. "Every time it failed to protect the vulnerable," he said. "Every time I saw the letter win over the spirit." After class, I lingered by the coffee urn, half hoping he wouldn't notice me. He did. "You asked the only real question in that room," he said, pouring decaf. "What's your name?" "Rachel Moore." "Moore," he repeated. "Strong name." I gave a small smile. "Doesn't feel like it some days." He looked at me again, longer this time. "Good. Means you're still wrestling. When you stop wrestling, you've either surrendered or gone numb." I didn't know then that he'd remember me, but 2 weeks later I got an email. "Ms. Moore, would you consider joining a panel I'm assembling on survivor-informed policy?" I read it twice, then said yes. The panel was small but powerful, 3 advocates, 2 policy researchers, and me, the only one without a title, without a resume that sparkled. But when we spoke, Haynes listened, took notes, asked my thoughts first. One afternoon, after a meeting, he pulled me aside. "You have something rare," he said. "Clarity without bitterness." I shrugged. "Maybe I just got tired of being angry. That's why you'll go further than you think." From that day on, he became more than a mentor. He became proof that someone could see me, not what I lacked, but what I carried, and more importantly, what I could build. The email came on a Tuesday. Subject line, "Nomination confirmed, Unsung Hero Award, state level." At first I thought it was spam, but then I saw the sender, Office of Public Affairs. It was real enough to make me stare at the screen for a full minute without blinking. I reread the message. "You've been selected as a finalist for the Unsung Hero Award, honouring individuals who've significantly impacted marginalised communities. The ceremony will be held at the Capitol Hall, April 28th, 7:00 p.m. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. April 28th. I knew that date. It was the same day Lily and Evelyn were set to be honoured at a charity gala. Something about generational philanthropy and community legacy. Evelyn had posted about it for weeks. A press photo shoot, a keynote, matching gowns, a mother-daughter image crafted carefully over time, without me. I called Judge Haynes. He picked up on the first ring. "I heard," he said. "Congratulations." "I didn't apply," I said. "You didn't need to," he replied. "I did," I paused. "Why?" "Because you're what that award was meant for, because they can't keep you small anymore." I didn't know what to say. "You should go," he added. "Speak, let them see who you really are." I thought about it all night, about standing on a stage in front of people who had no idea how hard I'd fought just to feel seen, about Evelyn's perfectly curated version of our family being shattered in real time by my presence, about the risk of being dismissed again, this time on a bigger stage. And then I thought, what if I don't go for them? What if I go for me? I said yes. The planning began immediately. A brief bio, media prep, photo approval. I borrowed a dress from a friend, deep emerald green, simple and strong. My hair was cut short, sharp. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I hadn't met before, someone who wasn't asking to be invited anymore. The day before the event, a news article appeared online. Meet the women behind this year's Legacy Gala. Evelyn's quote read, "Family means everything to us. Lily and I are proud to represent the Moore name." No mention of me, but I smiled anyway, because the next day they'd remember exactly who else carried that name. 3 days before the ceremony, my face appeared on the homepage of a local news outlet. I hadn't been notified, no warning, just a ping from a former classmate. "You're on the front page. Is this really you?" I clicked the link, half expecting something shallow or incomplete. Instead, I found a full-length feature titled, "The Woman They Erased, How One Sister's Silence Sparked a Citywide Movement." The photo was one I hadn't seen before, me speaking at a youth centre, sleeves rolled up, leaning into a circle of teenage girls. I looked strong, present, nothing like the shadow I used to be. The article traced my journey, from childhood neglect to community advocacy. They included quotes from the women I'd helped through housing crises, abuse cases, job placements. One line stopped me cold. "She saved my life, and she doesn't even know it," said Tanya Lopez, mother of 3. Then came the twist. Buried near the end of the article, almost like an afterthought, was a viral video link, a wedding, a walkout. Someone had filmed me leaving Lily's wedding. The angle wasn't flattering. You could see the uncertainty in my steps, the way I clutched the gift against my chest like a shield. Evelyn's voice, unmistakable, rang clear in the background. "You were told not to come. This is for family only." The internet did what it always does. Within hours, comments poured in. She handled that with more grace than I ever could. This is what generational gaslighting looks like. Imagine cutting out the one daughter who actually did something meaningful. By nightfall, the story had spread. Someone created a hashtag, #SeatForRachel. It trended locally by morning. At first, I was horrified. My most private wound was now public spectacle. But then something shifted. Strangers sent messages. "I'm the Rachel in my family too." Non-profits reached out for interviews. Event coordinators asked if I'd speak. One woman messaged simply, "Thank you for surviving. It gives me hope I can too." And suddenly what had been my shame became a mirror for others. Evening News picked it up. A soft-spoken anchor with sympathetic eyes summarised it like this. "Tomorrow night, 2 women named Moore will be honoured at 2 very different events. One for the legacy they've inherited, and one for the legacy she's built on her own." I sat alone on my couch, lights off, laptop open, not smiling, not crying, just breathing, like someone finally cracked a window in a room I'd been suffocating in for years. And outside that window, people were saying my name, not with pity, with pride. The Capitol Hall gleamed beneath floodlights. Cameras rolled. Ushers in navy blazers guided guests to velvet-lined seats. The air buzzed with polite applause and civic pride, the kind of celebration reserved for people who checked the right boxes, played the game, smiled for the photos. And somehow, I was there. I stood in the lobby, my name on the official programme, my seat reserved in the second row. I held the card like it might vanish if I looked away. Rachel Moore, honoree, printed in clean, bold serif. Unmistakable. From across the room I spotted Evelyn. Hair perfectly curled, dress pressed, a faux fur wrap draped over her shoulders despite the warm spring air. And next to her, Lily, in an elegant gown, visibly pregnant now, her hand resting gently on her stomach, the very image of familial legacy. They weren't supposed to be here, but of course they were. Someone must have invited all nominees' families. Maybe Haynes. Maybe the organisers. Maybe fate. Evelyn's eyes met mine, just for a second. She didn't smile. Neither did I. Inside the hall, the audience settled. Stage lights dimmed. The MC approached the podium with polished charisma and a clipboard. "Tonight," she began, "we honour those who've done the extraordinary quietly, who've changed lives without needing recognition, our unsung heroes." Polite applause. The screen above flickered to life. Photos, testimonials, moments from lives I'd touched. My voice echoed over the speakers, pulled from a workshop I didn't know was recorded. Sometimes healing doesn't look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like building something new from the ruins of what never was. I heard Evelyn shift in her seat. Then the MC smiled wider. "And now, our final honoree of the evening." A beat, a breath. "Rachel Moore." Applause, real, loud, sustained. I rose slowly, heart steady. I walked past Evelyn and Lily, who sat frozen in their front row chairs, disbelief etched into every muscle of their faces. The spotlight hit. The stage was mine. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. I stood behind the podium, palms flat on either side, letting the applause fade naturally. I didn't rush. For once, the room waited for me. "Thank you," I began, voice even, clear. "This moment doesn't erase the years I was invisible, but it reminds me, invisibility isn't the same as insignificance." There was a hush, that sharp, collective stillness that meant they were really listening. "I used to think being left out meant I didn't matter," I continued, "that if your family chose silence over presence, it meant you were broken. But that's a lie. My worth didn't disappear just because they refused to see it." From the front row, Evelyn's expression didn't change. But I saw Lily blink fast, her hand unconsciously tightening over her stomach. I closed my speech with a line I'd written at 3 a.m. the night before. "To anyone who has ever sat outside the family photo, the dinner table, the legacy, don't wait for an invitation. Build the home you deserve. Fill it with your own light." Applause thundered, but the twist hadn't landed yet. Not until the MC returned to the stage and said, "Rachel, we have one more announcement. This wasn't in the programme." I turned, surprised. She smiled warmly. "Along with this award, the Board of Directors of the Community Renewal Fund has unanimously voted to appoint Rachel Moore as its new Executive Director, effective immediately." The room exploded. I froze. The Community Renewal Fund, the most influential non-profit in the state, a position Lily had been publicly campaigning for, one Evelyn had helped her lobby behind closed doors. I'd heard whispers, but never imagined I was even being considered. On instinct, my eyes found Evelyn. She wasn't clapping. Neither was Lily. They were stunned. The kind of stunned that comes not from betrayal, but from disbelief that someone you dismissed could possibly win. The MC leaned in again, voice playful now. "Looks like the Moore name just got a whole new definition." Laughter, cheers, and just like that the balance shifted. They'd spent years crafting a family image with no space for me, and yet here I was, not just in the picture but holding the frame. The flowers arrived first. White lilies, of course, wrapped in soft gold paper tied with a cream satin bow. The card read simply, "Congratulations, proud of you, Mum." No signature, no apology, just 3 sentences, sterile, distant, coated in civility like dust over an old mirror. I placed them on the counter and stared for a moment before dropping them gently into the trash. 2 days later, she called. I didn't pick up. Then came the text. "Can we meet? Just coffee. I want to talk." I didn't reply. Instead, I received a message from an unfamiliar number. "Rachel, it's Lily. Mom's not doing well. She hasn't stopped crying since the ceremony. Please, just hear her out." That surprised me. Not the crying, but the idea that Evelyn Moore, stoic, poised, untouchable Evelyn, was unravelling. Curiosity won. We met at a small cafe near the riverfront. Neutral ground, public, safe. I arrived first, ordered black coffee, no cream. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller, not in stature, but in spirit. No pearls, no heels, just a plain cardigan, soft shoes, and the faintest tremble in her hands as she took the seat across from me. She didn't speak for several moments. Finally, "You looked beautiful that night." I said nothing. She exhaled slowly, eyes searching mine. "I know I haven't been fair to you. I thought I was doing what made sense. I thought," she paused, voice tightening, "that if I poured everything into Lily, we'd all be okay. That you didn't need me." "I didn't," I said quietly. "Eventually." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I was wrong," she whispered. "You deserved more than what I gave you. I see that now." I took a sip of coffee, let her words settle. "I don't expect things to go back," she added. "I just want a chance to start again." I looked at her, really looked. There was age in her face I hadn't noticed before, lines softened not by time but by regret. For the first time, I didn't see a woman in control. I saw a woman grasping for something slipping through her fingers. And yet, I didn't feel satisfaction, only silence. Evelyn reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box, slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside was my father's old compass watch. "He wanted you to have it," she said. "I never understood why." I did. Because I was the one who never stopped finding my way. The watch sat on my nightstand for a week. I didn't wear it, didn't wind it, but I kept it close like a quiet reminder of a man who once whispered bedtime stories while my mother planned Lily's future. I didn't answer Evelyn's follow-up texts, not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say. The coffee had closed the loop. There was no healing to be found in reopening it. Still, the next envelope surprised me. No name on the front, just my address. Inside, an ivory invitation bordered in gold. "You are cordially invited to a private family brunch at Lily's home, a celebration of reconciliation and legacy." I nearly laughed. Legacy, that word again. I flipped the card over, expecting a message. There was none. I stared at the envelope for a full minute before walking it to the kitchen, placing it on the table. Then I reached into a drawer and pulled out a blank white card. I didn't write a message. No signature. Just a seat chart. An image I printed from the live stream of Lily's wedding. The table where everyone sat, smiling, glasses raised. At the corner of the frame, a bouquet of lilies rested where my name should have been. I circled that spot in red, then wrote 6 words beneath it, in ink. "There's no seat for you either." I sealed the envelope and mailed it the next morning. No tracking, no ceremony, just closure. 3 days later, Lily called. "Rachel," she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Mum's upset." "I'm sure she is." "You didn't have to send that." "I know." Silence, then, "She's trying." "So was I." Another pause. "You really aren't coming?" I thought of the long table, the empty chair, my father's watch still ticking beside my bed. "No, Lily," I said softly. "I already have a seat. It just isn't at your table anymore." And I hung up, not in anger, but in peace. Forgiveness didn't arrive with a grand gesture. It didn't come with tears, apologies, or dramatic confessions. It came one ordinary morning when I stepped outside and felt the sun on my skin and realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Evelyn, not at Lily, not even at the version of myself that spent years begging for scraps of love. I walked to the community centre I now oversaw. The lobby buzzed with familiar noise, volunteers laughing, clients waiting, a child dragging a backpack twice her size. They knew me here, not by name alone, but by presence, by impact. I belonged. That day, we hosted a build-your-own-family potluck, a concept I'd created with my staff. People brought food and stories. No bloodlines required. Just warmth, space, and respect. I sat at the centre table, flanked by women I'd once helped escape violent homes. Across from me was a single father who now ran our food pantry. To my right, Tanya, the woman who once said I'd saved her life, placed a plate in front of me and grinned. "Eat, director. You earned it." I laughed. Genuinely. Halfway through the meal, my assistant approached. "You got a letter," she said, handing me a cream envelope, handwritten, from Evelyn. I opened it slowly. "Rachel, I know I can't undo the past, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know, I see you now. I see what you've built, who you've become. I hope someday, when you're ready, you'll let me stand beside you, even just once. Love, Mum. No pressure, no expectations, just hope." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my bag. I didn't respond, not because I was punishing her, because I had already forgiven her. But forgiveness isn't always an invitation. Sometimes it's a quiet release, a way to let go of what once hurt, while still choosing not to reopen the door it came through. That evening, I walked home beneath string lights still hanging from a block party. My keys jangled softly in my bag, my shoes clicked against the sidewalk like punctuation. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt whole. And that, I realised, was the real twist. Not that I'd won anything, but that I no longer needed to. I didn't plan to write it. It started as a journal entry, a way to process everything without unravelling. But as the words poured out, they felt less like confession and more like conversation. So I turned the entry into a blog post, the title, "On Being Uninvited." I hit publish at midnight. No fanfare, no promo, just a small voice added to the void. By morning, it had been shared over 1,000 times. Women tagged their sisters. Sons sent it to mothers. Strangers commented, "This is my story too." The post ended with a line that had echoed in my mind for weeks. I used to beg for a seat at their table. Now I build longer tables for others. It wasn't just a metaphor. The next month, I launched a new initiative, a program for people who had been displaced by family rejection, LGBTQ teens, women cut off after divorce, men disowned for choosing therapy over silence. We called it the Long Table. We didn't ask for credentials or explanations, just stories, just presence. At our first gathering, we had no decorations, no speeches, just food, folding chairs, and soft jazz humming from a Bluetooth speaker. I sat near the end of the table, watching as people laughed between bites, passed bowls of mashed potatoes, traded recipes. It was everything I'd ever wanted from family. No comparison, no conditions, just belonging. One woman leaned over and whispered, "I haven't eaten with people in 2 years." I smiled and handed her the bread basket. "Welcome back." That night, as we cleaned up, Tanya snapped a photo, me holding a tray of leftover pasta, a wide grin on my face, string lights glowing behind me. She posted it online with the caption, "She didn't just find a seat, she made space for all of us." The photo went viral. Again, Evelyn never responded to the blog. But I later learnt she read it, more than once, and that was enough. Because this wasn't her story anymore, it was mine, and it ended not with revenge or reconciliation, but with a new table, and more chairs than I ever imagined.